At the age of 12, Martin Pistorius was paralyzed by a mysterious illness. He couldn't move, talk, eat, or even make eye contact. But after 12 years, Martin came out of the pseudocome and was able to tell that he had been conscious all these years. He heard and understood everything, but he couldn't answer. Martin is now 45 years old, he has graduated, got married, is raising a son and has written a book about life with locked-in syndrome. Martin was born in Johannesburg in 1975 and was the eldest of 3 children of Joan and Rodney Pistorius. Martin grew up as an ordinary teenager in a large South African city, spent a lot of time with his brother and sister, was fond of electronics and playing cricket. This continued until January 1988. One day, Martin returned from school and complained to his parents about a sore throat. And when, after a while, improvised methods like tea with lemon did not help, Joan took her son to the hospital. The doctor told the parents that they had no reason to worry. Martin has all the symptoms of the common flu. He prescribed a course of antibiotics, a throat spray and several days of bed rest, but Martin wasn't getting any better. On the contrary, the condition only worsened. The teenager could barely eat anymore. After the course of antibiotics ended, but there was no improvement, the parents took their son to another clinic. There, doctors also suspected the flu at first, but after the parents' story, they conducted new tests. They began to treat Martin for tuberculosis, and then the diagnosis changed to cryptococcal meningitis. But no treatment gave results. Martin's condition only worsened, his body seemed to be collapsing, he became weak, lost the ability to speak and control his movements. The doctors still did not know what was wrong with him, but informed the parents that their son had fallen into a vegetative state. Martin couldn't speak, move, or even look into his eyes. Mental development tests have shown that his intelligence is now at the level of a 3-month-old child. It turned out that the guy had a brain infection, which continued to progress. Doctors advised the parents to simply take their son home, provide him with comfortable conditions and wait for imminent death. The family was devastated, their world turned upside down. They have just brought their son to the doctor about the flu, and now they are told that he is only a shell of that past person, which has a maximum of a couple of years left to live. Now Martin had new requirements for everyday life. The family had to adapt to them. Every day his father picked him up, bathed him, fed him, put him to bed. And at night he got up several times to turn his son over so that Martin would not have bed sores. Everyone around thought that Martin did not understand at all what had happened and what was happening around him. People treated him as if he had receded into the background. But it wasn't like that. The old Martin was still there. He knew everything and understood everything, but he couldn't move or speak, so everyone around him continued to ignore him. Gradually, my consciousness began to return, but no one realized that I had returned to life, and I could not find a way to tell anyone about it. He sat helplessly in his wheelchair, imprisoned in his own body, with no way to tell anyone what was going on. This nightmare has been a reality for Martin for 12 years. Over the years, he has come up with mechanisms in his head that have helped him get through this time. All he had were just his thoughts. He carefully observed the movement of sunlight during the day. He often dreamed about how his wheelchair would turn into a spaceship that would take him away from this world. Sometimes the parents took their son to a special medical center. According to Martin, these were his worst memories. The medical staff believed that the guy did not understand and did not feel anything, so they behaved rudely with him or, on the contrary, ignored him and left him helplessly sitting in front of the TV for the whole day. It has been more than 2 years since Martin was taken to the hospital with a sore throat, and his family suffered every day from the thought that their son would die at any moment. When doctors assumed that he would live no more than 2 years, the parents thought that one day their son's heart would simply stop and he would no longer suffer. But as the years passed, Martin was still alive, about 11 years after the onset of the disease, Joan told her son, "I hope you die." Could she have known that Martin could hear her? I know it's terrible to say that. I just wanted some relief. Martin recalls that at that moment, part of him wanted to cry, and part of him wanted to fight. Over time, he began to understand his mother's despair. Every time she looked at him, she saw only a cruel parody of the once healthy child she loved so much. His family's life revolved around taking care of him. His siblings faded into the background, as the main focus was on making Martin a comfortable existence. The marriage of the parents also began to crack at the seams. The most terrible thing is that Martin was a helpless witness to what his illness was doing to a once strong and friendly family. There were many moments when I gave up, plunging into a dark abyss. I remember one particularly sad one. My father left me in the car when a random stranger walked by. He looked at me and smiled. I wanted to smile back so much. Martin wondered if anyone would notice that he had already regained consciousness. He needed someone who would just pay attention and take a closer look. For so many years, I looked like a ghost. I could hear and see everything, but I was invisible. A miracle happened in the form of Nurse Verna van der Walt. She worked as an aromatherapist and came to the medical center once a week, where Pistorius was sometimes brought. He doesn't know if it was her intuition or if she was just paying more attention to her patients than the others, but Verna realized that Martin could hear and understand her. She told her parents about it and advised them to do new tests. After several tests, doctors confirmed that Martin's brain activity had improved. Because he couldn't speak, he was hooked up to a speech computer, and for the first time in 12 years, he was able to say what he was feeling. Martin said that he began to wake up 2 years after he was misdiagnosed and remembered the rudeness and cruelty of the medical staff at the rehabilitation center. And when asked what this moment of the first dialogue in 12 years was like, Martin said, "I think the best word would be relief mixed with excitement and trepidation. And I thought to myself, what's next?" Martin found himself in a world he didn't really know anything about and didn't understand how to exist in it. But it was still necessary to start somewhere, so he got a job making photocopies. He began to read a lot, says that he read more in a year than in his entire previous life. As a result, Martin even graduated and got a job as a freelance developer and web designer. In 2009, he met Joanna and a year later they got married, and in 2018 Martin and Joanna had a son, Sebastian. In 2011, Martin released Ghost Boy, an autobiography about living with locked-in syndrome, which became a bestseller. After many years of silence, Martin has an important message that he would like to share with the whole world. I think there is always hope, no matter how small it may be. And also treat everyone with kindness, dignity, compassion and respect, regardless of whether they understand you or not.